started just with our intro and then yeah, I'm sure people will be trickling in as they do. But good evening everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our How to Start a Nonprofit workshop. So just so everyone knows, and you probably got a little notification when you came into the Zoom room that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on our Be More Beautiful YouTube channel, as well as sent out to all registered participants. So if you don't want your face to show up on the recording, feel free to turn off your camera. And if you have any questions during the speaker's presentation, please feel free to type them in the chat or hold them until the end, because we will be having a dedicated question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Um, and while our speaker is presenting, please keep your microphones on mute. So before we dive in, I will just give a quick little brief overview of Be More Beautiful. In case anyone here is not familiar with us, so our program, Be More Beautiful, is a community-driven peer-to-peer initiative. We are a program of the Baltimore City Government's Environmental Control Board. Our program aims to not only shift behaviors and attitudes about caring for the city's appearance, but also to motivate residents, businesses, and organizations to take an active role in projects and activities that keep Baltimore beautiful. We run a number of grants throughout the year and also host monthly workshops like this one that focus on community organization capacity building, urban gardening, creative placemaking, etc. In addition, we also have weekly volunteer events through the spring, summer, and fall. So you can become directly involved in keeping Baltimore beautiful through lending a hand at one of our many green space partner sites. And if you'd like to stay connected with Be More Beautiful, feel free to send me a message with your email in the chat and I will add you to our mailing list. So tonight we are very honored to welcome our facilitator, Ginny Lawhorn. So Ginny is from Baltimore Main Streets, a program within Baltimore City Mayor's Office of Small and Minority Business Advocacy and Development. Their office is committed to empowering small and minority-owned businesses across Baltimore City by providing essential support, mentoring, and networking opportunities. And their mission is to offer the resources and opportunities needed to help these businesses grow and flourish within the community. So now I'll turn it over to Ginny, who will tell us more about her work and share her nonprofit expertise.
Thank you so much. Morgan, it's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you to everyone for sharing their time this evening. As was shared, I am a member of the Baltimore Main Streets team, so I support the 9 partner sites across the city. I'm also a long-serving board member of Fells Point Main Street and of the Waterfront Partnership Management Authority, so I have experience in day-to-day nonprofit management as well as board compliance dynamics. So we can start with the first slide, the next slide, please, Morgan. So this evening, we're going to go through several steps around assessing your needs and objectives, how to organize, develop, plan, submit, adopt bylaws, file articles of incorporation, obtain the necessary steps for being an entity eligible for tax exempt status, how to submit, learning corporate responsibilities, filing to be allowed to solicit, which is a specific step in the state of Maryland, fundraising dynamics, and then planning for your future growth. So nonprofit dynamics are very similar to those of for-profit businesses with more public-facing responsibility and stewardship. So we're going to touch on those community roles and dynamics in this evening's presentation. So we could go to the next slide, please. I'm going to start with the basics. We'll go through structure, evaluating the role of a nonprofit and if that is the best path for your vision, the legal status, bylaws, and compliance. Thank you. A nonprofit organization is established to serve a purpose rather than generating profit. So this is very specific to how your vision is developed and what outcomes you see for your community. It exists as a separate legal entity and has its own rights and responsibilities, as well as dedicated objectives that live past the individuals who form it and live past the individuals that are serving for it. So it's important to understand that when you're starting a nonprofit, it needs to be rooted in work that can move forward past your individual goals and objectives and continue to serve the community with and without you. One thing that's very important in your consideration of the role of a nonprofit is the objective that you have when you start. And if that objective can be met without the process of beginning a new nonprofit, is there someone in your community who is doing similar work or can act as a fiscal sponsor if this is the goal of a one-time grant? So many communities have seen string lighting in neighboring communities and have learned that, just a very straightforward example, have learned that the community organization in their neighboring or adjacent place used grant funds to execute those string lights or adopt a lot programs, and they feel that the best option to deliver value or to complete that objective for their community is to start a new nonprofit, which is both a wonderful objective for you and your friends and neighbors, but also a cumbersome legal obligation to undertake to deliver a one-time project rather than a long-serving year-over-year mission. So if you have a project-based solution, often there is a neighboring association or someone serving Baltimore City that can come in for you as a fiscal sponsor to help you grant seek and execute for one-time objectives or for smaller collaboration. And then you're sharing in that rather than having to go through the 6-month to 36-month process of establishing a nonprofit. So that, I think that is really, really important. Additionally, the mission really needs to be focused on volunteer-led objectives until the capacity of an organization can be grown to hire or employ someone, and we're going to touch on that at a future point. The IRS is not specifically in favor at this time of starting a nonprofit for the function of hiring someone immediately. It is the delivering of value in the allowed pathways rather than simply being exempt from paying tax. So what is your best structure can be evaluated in these talking points as you're working with friends, neighbors, associates. Are you working alone or with others? Nonprofits have a minimum requirement of participating board members, participating organizational members when you start. Is your project short or long-term? Similar to what we're touching on with, is this a one-time deliverable, or is this something that we see that isn't being met? How will you fund your organization? There are startup expenses that we're going to discuss, and many times when members of the community go in pocket to fund that origination fee, you then feel a sense of there can be a sense of ownership that's felt that is true to the value you're providing in the money. But in nonprofits, there is no single owner. So those are contributions that you're making for the betterment of the community. So how will those initial filing fees, organization fees, review legal fees be covered? What is your business plan? Are you soliciting for grants? Are you making public solicitations for money? Can the mission move forward without you? That is one of the most difficult points of evaluation often when friends, associates, neighbors come together, is how can this specific objective move forward when it is appropriate for the founding members' time to be expired off and for the next generation of leadership to come forward. What are your resources? And resources aren't only monetary. Time is the most valuable asset we all have. So how are we working our time into the equation to start a nonprofit and to maintain it? Additionally, what expertise resources do you have available? And do you feel confident in those resources being made available as a recurring contribution, or is this a one-time availability? And what are your concerns with liability? And liability is something that's very, very important and needs to be considered on the front end of establishing a nonprofit, in addition to how you are executing your project work. So the role of a founder, I believe that the majority of participants on the call have identified a need in their community, whether immediate neighborhood or Baltimore at large, that they feel may not be met by the organizations that are representing a place, or may feel that they can better fill that role with the new organization. And that may often be true. I have no discouragement of that. Community associations across Baltimore are doing incredible work every day. However, nonprofits exist and are controlled by a board of directors who make major policy and operational decisions. They are not single person entities by design in the United States. So there is a minimum requirement of board participation, and there is a minimum requirement for public facing information. So when you're founding an organization, it needs to be visioned as something that can move on without you, and with the knowledge that in the United States, you have to provide transparency in your filings for who is providing support to these organizations, how they're providing support, in board hours, in financial contributions. And it's required that that leadership turnover oft in best practice much more frequently than they tend to in actuality. Board of directors also, when you grow a nonprofit to a functional size, that it is required or would be best to have staff. The board of directors are responsible for the action of those team members. So executive directors can do a great deal for a nonprofit organization, but the board of directors continue to carry the liability forward of the decisions that are made with the organization. Okay. So getting started is the most exciting part of a nonprofit. It's when we all come together and we stoop about how our communities can be better places, or how we can find solutions to challenges that we're seeing. Um, Engaging a core group of initial committed individuals that will serve as an interim board of directors, and if possible, if the capacity is there, a board of advisors, to help define the mission, is really the most important thing that you can do when you're getting started. It's having people dedicated to the mission, being accountable to each other, identifying people who will join the decision-making capacity, because you must have a president, a secretary, and a treasurer legally to file for nonprofit status. That is the minimum number of members. It's generally best to also have a vice president, and if possible, some advising members or initial volunteers. But the most exciting part is getting folks together, having a shared vision. Then defining that mission so you can clearly articulate the organization's purpose, goals, and how you are addressing the community needs, why you are needed or this new entity is needed to meet those needs is important in your consideration. Developing a preliminary budget and fundraising outline. So starting a nonprofit in the state of Maryland requires a $300 articles of incorporation fee, review of bylaws, which should always be done with an attorney. There are some volunteer or low-cost organizations in Baltimore City that can help with that, but there are fee-based dynamics to review bylaws. 990s need to be annual financial filings, need to be certified by a CPA. Those have an annual cost of $800 to $2,000, depending on the size of the CPA and the size of the filing. So understanding where those first dollars are coming from is very important. How you're going to be structured, if you're soliciting, if you're only grant seeking, if you're a membership-based organization, and then establishing leadership. So what does chair, vice chair, treasurer, secretary look like for you? And how are you being equitable in the responsibility of those roles? How are you holding each other accountable? What does the commitment of time look like? And then having that core group, hopefully plus a couple more people, determining the governance structure. So this is a really interesting matter. Determining whether you are a board-run entity or whether you are a membership-run entity. So a board-run entity has a core group of people who are determining the roles, objectives, decision-making, are fundraising, and are managing the nonprofit's objective, where membership models, which most of us are familiar with via neighborhood associations, where there are people who are eligible to participate. There are generally year-over-year dues that help fund the organization. Those become the voting members as well. So you have the board making the majority of decisions, but when you have a membership model-based nonprofit, you then have to include those paying members in decision-making. And it is a wonderful way to engage equitably in your community and have the people making up the place be part of the vision for how to move forward. You then do have to manage how those voices will be incorporated and how disagreement will be managed, because the board may have an objective, a placemaking decision, a fundraising decision, a grant seeking decision that differs from that of the membership, and determining in both your structure and your organizational outline how those decisions will be made can be one of the more challenging elements of determining the model that you choose for your nonprofit. So legal status is really important and something that I hope is deeply considered in how you choose your path, whether it be project-based and seeking a fiscal sponsor, or whether it be moving forward with an official nonprofit. Understanding that 501c3s are legal entities that exist in and of themselves and with legal liability is very important. So if anyone has established a business or is familiar with the process, starting a 501c3 in Maryland starts the same way. So you file your articles of incorporation with the state and you formally enter into an agreement for this entity to exist. You then reach out to the federal government you're assigned an EIN number so that you can have the capacity for banking, which is very important. That comes with its own liability, obviously. To be eligible for hiring, you need an EIN. Also, it then requires annual tax filings. And if you're employing, quarterly tax filings. So understanding the liability that comes with having an employer identification number is very important. After you have established the nonprofit as a living, breathing, incorporated entity that has been assigned an EIN number, you have a mission, you have a defined objective, and you have members of the community available to represent as a board. You then evaluate whether you are going to apply for a 1023 IRS form to be exempt in tax status, or whether you're going to file a 1023 EZ. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that tonight because that is both a personal decision and because the timelines with the IRS on that are not something that I'm comfortable speaking to at the moment. 1023 EZ is designed to approve a 501c3 who will have gross receipts projected of under $50,000 a year for 3 recurring years up within 6 months. So if you file a 1023 EZ, you say, we have incorporated, we are new, this is our objective, we're ready to go. We're going to have $50,000 or less of gross receipts. That includes total grants, total contribution, total income of $50,000 or less for 3 years. You can hypothetically, at the best of times with the IRS, that is designed for you to be approved in under 6 months. I cannot speak to the current processing rate. I can only speak to the design of that form. A traditional IRS form 1023 can take up to 24 months at the best of times for legal consideration of organizations who anticipate having gross receipts over $50,000 for 3 consecutive years as a new entity, because the gross receipts in that denomination become larger considerations of where the money is coming from, how it's being accounted for, is someone being employed. So it is important in the budget projection and in your evaluation of establishment that you really think through what those 2 things are. And during the onboarding process, that you work with a fiscal sponsor so that you can take in income during the time that a formal IRS form 1023 is being reviewed. Maryland has an interesting model that's an additional layer of transparency and accountability that is a charitable solicitation form. It's a public facing database. Maryland is great at public facing databases. So you can go in and search any charitable institution who's been accredited with the state and see that they're up to date, current, their 990s are on file, and they're allowed to solicit in the state of Maryland. That is an annual filing that has to be done to stay in positive solicitation for the state. So that's important to consider. It is, I believe it's $75 a year. And then if you miss deadlines, there are penalties and fines. But it's important to remember that in Maryland, there are federal requirements and then there are state requirements. If you will be soliciting funds from individuals, anyone but the government. If you ask for money from anyone but government entities, you must have a solicitation registration in the state of Maryland. So reflecting on this, it's incredibly important that when you're working with your core group and thinking about establishing a new 501c3, that you're developing clear understandings of rules, responsibilities, and obligations, and that managing those is something that is available to the capacity of the group that is working together. We touched on this. So board structure is really important to how the mission moves forward and also the legal structure of your organization. So top line, it's very important to ensure that the majority of the members are unrelated, that they are not interfamily, because those conflicts of interest can be larger and more frequent. And it can be difficult for members to feel comfortable engaging when things can feel like family matters. So if you are applying for a new 501c3 and board members are related, those applications are reviewed more stringently. So just think about that as you're finding your core group of people and identifying who will be represented. It's very important that the diversity of skill, resources, perspective, and lived experience be represented on your board, and that you're reflecting the community that is going to be served. So if you're establishing a neighborhood association who would like 501c3 status to grant, seek, and deliver value to a place, are we representing long-term residents as well as new residents? Do we have folks with lived experience as well as professional experience? What resources can be brought? And resources aren't financial. Resources are time. Are there tools that we can borrow? Are there skills that we can develop together? When we talk about resources, while there are expenses to establish, we're talking about how the work can move forward. And again, 501c3s are specifically designed to deliver public good. The fastest way to lose 501c3 status, especially in a newly organized structure, is personal gain. Whether it's material gain, whether it's employment gain, the mission of a tax-exempt entity is to deliver value that is not being realized already, and no one individual is seeing monetary or material gain. It's very important that your board be reliable, trustworthy, and engaged. So knowing who your board members are, how they're going to represent, how they're going to respect your community, and that they're going to be there for you are the top line through lines for who you should be seeking in your leadership. We're going to go through duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience. So duty of care goes back to that personal gain and ensuring that the mission is being delivered. Duty of loyalty is putting the nonprofit's mission and objective ahead of personal opinions, and that everyone being represented or in a leadership position is being respected before personal preference. And duty of obedience is in ensuring that conflicts of interest and privacy, especially in neighborhood associations or business associations, that conflict of interests are being declared and that transparency is available to ensure that proprietary information is not being shared. Bylaws are a really interesting element of nonprofit work. I would be glad to share out bylaws I just rewrote for an organization. I wrote them in Maryland's new plain language standard. So the top line piece of advice I'm going to give you is please don't assign the homework of bylaws to ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. Bylaws are your governing rules and your internal handbook for how decisions will be made, how leadership will be determined. They really must be tailored to your organization and your mission. When you rely on automated platforms, they're pulling from the entire breadth of the internet, and you're not going to get something that's tailored to your need, your mission, and what speaks to your role of governance. So please be very mindful that this is a labor. I can't speak highly enough of the Community Law Center. So they are a low barrier to entry uh, resource available in Baltimore. They host a how to maintain a nonprofit seminar about 9 times a year. I think it's $85 to attend, and then you can use that admission fee. If you need to seek guidance from them, you can use that registration fee towards your legal fees. So I can't speak highly enough of everything they do. And I really want you to think of your bylaws as something inherent to your objective, and that they are tailored to what you need. It's also important that they be established to avoid conflicts. So if you write your bylaws as a mutual agreement and you think about them as kind of a prenuptial to how the community is going to come together, and recognizing that because this entity lives past everyone involved, that you write them for your future self as well. Like, how can we lay out our mutual expectations, understandings? No one wants to have a conflict, but if you have the opportunity to put in writing how you're going to navigate conflict or tie votes or removing questionable behavior from the board, you will be doing your future self and community a favor in ensuring that these bylaws work for your specific mission. They can be amended as needed if you come into a large grant that creates an entirely new dynamic for your organization. You likely will have to add an audit requirement to your bylaws. You will need to go through different accounting dynamics. You will need to have new fiscal controls. You may have to set up a bank account that requires 2 signers. All of those things can then be integrated into your bylaws to speak specifically to what your organization needs then. They should be reviewed every 2 years to have a refresh on lived experience. Oh, do you remember when we had this vote tie and we didn't really know what to do, and then we spent, a week negotiating on it? Could we have had a tiebreaker rule in our bylaws? And then they should be amended every 5 years, being very considerate of, do we have new leadership roles coming on? Do we need to expand our allowed board capacity? Do we have too many board members? Do we need a new limit on board terms? And really being considerate of how you're going to move this organization forward for the betterment of the community, and to have this resource to refer back to as your guiding principles, especially if you are an entirely board run or membership. If you will not have employed team members to manage day to day, your bylaws can also work as your calendar to ensure that you are, every January, we're sitting down, we're reviewing our spends from the previous year, we're preparing for our 990. You can use this document as the guiding light for how your organization is moving forward and how that work can be moved forward. We're all familiar with community organizations that were robust and incredible under one generation of leadership, and then it was time for that leadership to turn over, and the current leadership is under or unprepared for what is required, and then there's languishing. And that is not fair to the community that it is tasked to serve, whether it be physical, hypothetical. But when you are given the courtesy of a 501c3 status, continuing that public service is the top line responsibility. A 501c3 organization must do and this is certainly by no means the beginning and end, but this is really when you're considering the worthwhileness of establishment. Please consider that a 501c3 must not use its earnings to the benefit of individuals or a specific group of individuals. It is a community good, or it is delivering on a need for at large benefit, not to enrich or make easier specific individuals. It must be a nonprofit for the public benefit. I apologize if that seems redundant, but it is important. So when you are looking at your 1023 or 1023 EZ, you will need to speak specifically to your pathway for public benefit, religious, educational, scientific or research, literacy, public safety, presenting cruelty to children or animals, beautification of public place. These are all pathways that you can find for justification of a new 501c3, but the root must be in shared public benefit. You must have a charitable purpose, a charitable purpose as defined by the IRS. And that's something that you will determine with your core group of people, and you will evaluate under your charitable purpose. If you become an entity who produces income outside of the charitable purpose, you must pay unrelated business income tax. If you become an entity that holds property and the purpose of holding property goes beyond your defined public benefit, and you are producing income on it, that is something that falls outside of 501c3 status, and you must pay unrelated business income tax on that. That is a place where both a CPA needs to be engaged and nonprofits need to be very mindful, because that is a place where entities will get unintentionally jammed up, not realizing that the specific purpose of that income does not serve the organization's mission, and that they have failed to remit taxes as are due. You are seeing this, one place you are seeing this is in religious institutions or churches or nonprofits who are holding property that are blighting community, and continuing to fail to remit either income tax for collecting rent, if it's serving a commercial purpose, or paying property tax that they were approved to not remit because they were providing a community benefit, and that has languished. So you can have both the call on that tax as well as the 501c3 status put into question if you are not providing a public benefit as defined by the organization's mission. You must be very thoughtful and considerate of limiting political and legislative action. You can speak in favor of the need for solutions, but 501c3s in America are not permitted to spend more than 5% of their annual revenue on political or legislative activity. And that is because they are neutral parties. They live and breathe independent of their board, and they are required to be neutral in political candidates, in policy and legislative activity. There are entities that are allowed to work in that space. 501c3s are not. Additionally, you must provide public transparency. So your 990s must be available to the public. That is your annual tax filing. Your board of directors needs to be publicly available on a website, in the state registration, listed in your annual tax filings. There are public websites that you can use to look at examples of what that transparency and requirement looks like. But it is incredibly important that you understand that all of the supporting parties, accounting for the income, accounting for revenue streams, that is available to the public upon request, whether it be to you as the organization or through the IRS. If you ever encounter that will not provide you their tax filings or board records, you are allowed to go to the IRS, provide them with documentation that it was not provided upon request, and they have a requirement to remit it to you. So just as an overview, and then we'll move to Q&A, and I'm glad to help with anything within my scope of knowledge. The first thing you want to do is assess your goal, and do you need a nonprofit to achieve this? Can what you want to deliver to the community at large, physically, spiritually, can it be done without the assumption of responsibility for a new legal entity? Can you gather a team to come together around a shared vision? Can you develop a mission statement? Can you plan for that budget and fundraising capacity? Are we adopting bylaws and conflict of interest policies that we feel comfortable holding our neighbors, friends, associates to? Are we comfortable filing articles of incorporation, being responsible for a business entity, obtaining an employer identification number, going through the process of filing for a new tax exempt status, learning the corporate responsibility, holding the entity to that, filing the solicitation with the state, learning the fundraising rules under that solicitation, and then planning for the growth of your organization so it can move forward without you. So these are the kind of foremost points to consider as you're evaluating the need to establish a new 501c3.
Great, thank you so much, Ginny. That was a wonderful presentation. Um, okay, let me just see in the chat. I know someone had asked about um that they would love a copy of the bylaw template.
Yep,
So maybe if possible, maybe you could send it to me and I'll get it out to everyone who registered.
absolutely. Yep.
Perfect, thank you. So yeah, everyone feel free if you have any questions you've been brewing on during the presentation. This is a good time to ask. Feel free to either put them in the chat or unmute yourself, and you can raise your hand and yeah, ask whatever you want.
Can I ask a question?
Well, yeah, of course. Oh, good to see you
We,
here.
hi. So I'm part of some established nonprofits, but I invited we have lots of new board members. So I was inviting people to log in to sort of understand about things, but um, there's always things that you don't know that you don't know, right? So it was a very nice and a very clear presentation. Thank you. And I have to admit that I only found out last week from the Community Law Center talking about something that we were supposed to be registered as a charitable group. And it may, I don't know when that law came in Maryland, maybe it's been around for decades, but I've been involved for decades. So we have, our actual personal budget is only a few thousand if we're lucky, and we use that to pay board insurance. But we've never filed, and so now we know, and we will. So I hope they don't want to go back and penalize
No.
us. But we didn't know. It's not. I mean, it's great that you had it there, but I think in previous things I've attended, that hasn't been mentioned. And so mostly we just get our dues, our membership dues, but then we've done lots of neighborhood improvements where we've raised grants. So we should have been registered and doing this. So thank you for including that. I
Thank
never
you.
heard of it. So fingers crossed we're not going to get into too much trouble.
No, no. The one thing I can say for the current comptroller's office is they're very understanding and kind. So if you lead with kindness and ask for forgiveness, I don't see any issue, especially if you've done every other part of it, right? So it is that subjective local dynamic. So you're welcome to ask Morgan for my personal information, and if there's something I can do to be helpful to you through that. I've helped folks more often out of non-compliance than with establishing after delivering value, but I'm glad to help in any way that I can.
Well, and normally we've only raised, a few thousand here and there, but we actually were very lucky to get $100,000 Chesapeake Bay Trust grant to plant lots of trees. So now that's a lot of money, and then we could get really into trouble. So I'm like, uh-oh. So I guess I'll call them and fess up, and then we'll see what we have to do. But it's great that you had it right there so that people know when they're starting. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, so I see FTR has their hand raised. Feel free to ask away.
How you guys doing?
Hey, good
How's it?
evening.
My name is Jamon, actually. I work for Fair Street Outreach, which is an organization here in the 21223 zip code. And we're in the process of trying to find some grants as well. So if you have any information on that, maybe you can send me. I would love that. But on the flip side, I'm also trying to start a nonprofit myself for the community. And I have everything written up. I actually created my own articles or organization or incorporation and everything. I have my bylaws written up, but I have 23 bylaws. And a few people were like, that's too many bylaws. Is that too many bylaws?
No, it's not. It's not. If you were so courteous and thoughtful that something occurred to you 23 times that needed to be addressed, then
It
you
is.
need 23 bylaws. Yes.
The nonprofit that I'm going to start is called the Neighborhood Number 23
Okay.
Foundation, right?
Mhm.
And I'm glad you spoke about the member versus board, because I need more clarity on that, how that runs. Make sure that, is the members more on the staffing side or is that on the board side?
That is actually mission oriented and financial capacity oriented. So both models can employ people. The membership model versus board model is a membership model is much more frequent in neighborhood associations or
Right.
in lodges. If you're a member of a lodge, if you have dynamics that define your eligibility to be part of something, whether it's geographic or professional, and then they pay dues, but then they also, through being dues paying members, are owed some type of representation. I like to think of it as like adjacent to a union, right? So you're supposed to have some type of voice in it because you are eligible for involvement and you've paid to be a member.
That's the
A
case with me.
board,
That's the case with me. I do have people who have paid to put up to start the organization,
okay.
register it, and do the tax exemption. And I
Mhm.
want to be able to get that's what I'm looking for. So
Okay.
3 bylaws was for that, but maybe that'll help me whether I need to upgrade it or downgrade it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would advise going to, and I'll share with Morgan the next community law center opportunity. I would advise going to that session and then engaging with them for advice because they are attorneys, engaging with them on advice around what would be due to those members versus if it was a board run organization, then that is the decision making entity. So being mindful of do you need fewer or more people speaking to the mission, and then making that determination, because you can always move from a board model to a membership model. You cannot often revert from a membership model to a board model.
Okay. Okay, that's perfect. And one more question.
Yep.
What's the difference between a 501 and 508c1a?
I
501c3 and a
that one is not my wheelhouse. I work specifically in the 501c3. I work with some 501c6, which are allowed to do more. They're generally quasi entities. So Visit Baltimore, BDC, some of the community benefits districts are 501c6. They have more flexibility. They don't have the same transparency requirements, but you have to be so big to get to that. So those are the only two that I work with.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing. I'm familiar with your organization.
Oh, yes, I appreciate that. I just started here about 2 weeks ago, and I'm planning on making this something to remember.
Thank you.
That's really great. Yes, echoing the congratulations on that. Um, okay, so a couple questions in the chat. Okay, Anthony asks, can nonprofits working on environmental issues, for example, lobby members of the state legislature, for bills or work on drafting language for a bill?
That's a wonderful question. So most entities that work in that space have a 501c6 and then a 501c3, and they abide by the pathways allowed, and or they hire lobbyists who are allowed to speak on their behalf, work specifically in the language of their objective. Um, the advocacy part is very sensitive. So you can identify an issue, you can identify your suggestion for how to address an issue. So, for example, one of my deep and widest challenges in Baltimore is with allowed absentee commercial property owners. So people that hold properties and willfully do not lease them, and then the blight that it creates. I can speak to that challenge as a board member of a Main Street entity. I can speak to that as much as I see fit. I cannot seek a specific solution, but I can work in concert with supporting solutions that are put forth, or I can make requests of improvement to legislation. Introducing the legislation is a very complicated area, and one that is best done through a lobbyist or someone not affiliated with the nonprofit.
Great, thank you for that. Um, okay, next question, Amber. Amber says, "Hi, thanks a lot for the insight. For someone very early," oops, sorry, my thing scrolled. For someone very early in the idea stage, are there any particular resources you'd recommend for exploring and evaluating existing nonprofits and their missions to identify gaps or opportunities before getting too involved with a new idea?
That's a wonderful, very thoughtful question. I would identify the challenge, whether it's geographic or concept based, and then work with, I don't know if it would be the solicitation office or Amber, would you be able to put the in the chat or off mute? Would you mind sharing with me the gap that you're hoping to fill so I can speak to it specifically?
So hi. Hi
Hi.
everybody. Thanks for answering my question. Like I said, I'm super early. I'm not sure even if a nonprofit is what aligns with my interest on my goals, but I did see this meeting. I just wanted to stop by just to see if there was anything that could, help me with my ideas. Essentially, I am a cybersecurity specialist. I'm very passionate about technology and computers. I currently work with adults, training them to be prepared to enter the cybersecurity workforce,
Oh, wow.
adults 18 plus. But I am still very passionate about my longer term interests, which are like arts and just serving the community, um, community connections and networking, and just kind of I don't just yeah, I'm not sure. Just something with technology and making sure that it's kind of standardized for like younger individuals and not only adults.
That's a great question. So the way I would think about if that would be best served as an independent 501c3, or whether it be service-based, is there an entity currently fulfilling that need where I can go in and be a contributor? Can I design a program for the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, or for Job Corps or YouthWorks, now that YouthWorks includes individuals above 18? Can I go into a platform and, rather than establishing my own 501c3 with all of the responsibilities that we outlined, am I able to share my experience, vision, expertise with members of an organization who is already serving those in that need? And then I can expand their capacity and explore if my expertise is contributing enough, that is the best place of execution. And if it is that successful, that you feel you have the capacity, both in time, energy, resources, that you want to deliver it on your own, then you can explore that. But to start a 501c3 to then develop programming is often the burnout of executing the business side of it, because it is still a business that exists with or without an individual. Like, the structure lives without one individual member, where if you design programming, that programming can be tied to you and how you feel that needs to be delivered, without the burden of the liability, the structure, the annual filings. And you can focus on your skill set, what you want to deliver to the community within the pathway of someone managing the capacity.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Very
you.
helpful. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you so much for that. Okay, next question, from Maru. How does a for-profit with mission get the quasi-nonprofit? Say a food truck having a day where there's hot food cooked that feeds the community, or what are some options?
That is a similar capacity where you can partner with an existing 501c3. So if you wanted to work with Meals on Wheels, or Movable Feast, they're an incredible organization who delivers meals to homebound medical patients, cancer, HIV. So if you had a for-profit business who wanted to serve a specific person, a specific purpose outside of your for-profit daily objective, and 1 out of 7 days you wanted to give back to the community, that can be done through an existing 501c3 in their pathway, and then they can grant you the fair market value of your giving as tax deductible. So that would benefit you and share the recognition of the value that you're delivering and the cost that is coming from your for-profit business without the function of needing to establish a private 501c3 and then having that partner plugged into a community that needs to be served. Otherwise, if it was, we want to do this, we want to do it our way, we want to fulfill this need in the community that we don't feel is being met, that would require a standalone entity. The for-profit, whether it's sole proprietorship, limited liability corporation, limited liability partnership, that is a for-profit pathway. The nonprofit pathway would need to be established separately.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, let me see. Um, okay, Jan, I know you had a couple questions, but yeah, I'm sorry, they might have gotten a little lost in the sauce asking about what's the reason for those rules. Yeah, I don't know if you wouldn't mind just like unmuting yourself and just clarifying. I apologize.
Well, I forget what the reason for those rules was about. It was back at 6:56. I don't know what we were touching on at that point, but I was surprised when you mentioned that BDC is a 501c3.
I'm on their ProPublica right now, and they are a designated 501c3. I believe they are both a 501c3 and a 501c6. I believe they have two.
Do they wear different hats for different purposes?
I don't want to speak to their mission. I'm not affiliated with them. I'm just looking at their legal status right now.
Oh, so that's why they call it quasi-public?
I can't speak to now, so
Yeah, I'll look into
I
it.
can't. Yeah.
I'll try to look into it. They're kind of hard to get information about.
If you search City of Baltimore Development Corporation 990, ProPublica has filing, and I'm looking at it right now, and it is checked as a 501c3.
Mm-hmm.
So
what's the difference between that and a 501c6?
I'm not. I would be glad to have that conversation offline. They're different, like functional organizations objective. So some can lobby, some can fund seek, like it's, I don't want to speak on behalf of any one organization because the application for that is very subjective.
Oh. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. And a couple follow-up questions from Maru. Okay, they're asking, but it's doable, question mark. I do see it as as separate too, for profit and nonprofit to serve needs not yet met or a more specific focus. I'll look into the existing organizations. Um, yeah, sorry, Maru, if you want to clarify anything, feel free to take yourself off mute. Okay. Yeah, okay, no worries. Yeah, so does anybody else have a question? Jan, do you have
Yeah,
another?
I was just reviewing some of the notes I was typing up. And did you say something about a 508? Is there
I did not. I believe FTR asked a question, and that's not a pathway that I've worked in.
quasi entities?
I'm not unfamiliar with that. I'm going to speak specifically to 501c3s
Yeah,
to keep
Okay.
my explanation clear.
Oh,
you
okay.
typically on 501s, but I did ask about the difference between a 501 and a 508c1A. I
See
mean,
what?
yeah, 508c1A. I mean, I
Oh,
know the difference, but I was, trying to get a little broader explanation if someone, else knew that was in that field. But now I understand that people that work in the 501 won't speak on anything else other than the 501 because that's their field.
Mhm.
oh, okay. Thanks.
Great. Any more questions? Okay, cool. Well, I will be sending out a recording of the presentation as well as the slides. And then if you're okay with it, Ginny, I will also include your contact info if anyone has any follow-ups. Um, but we just really appreciate you all being here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to maybe hearing about the future, some of the maybe organizations that you all will be starting. But yeah, thank you all so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks very much.
And thank you so much, Ginny.
Thank you guys. Have a wonderful night.